Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Dynamics User Group Meetup today on 24th April. And we will look at how to leverage Azure services in Business Central. So, what is Dynamics User Group? For those who are new, who have never heard of it, it's a group that was founded in 1995, and it's the industry's longest running independent Microsoft Dynamics community. It began as an online discussion forum and has since expanded to provide video content, training programs, interactive virtual and in-person events, regional meetups, sponsorship opportunities, and much more. This is a free community for users, implementers, resellers of Microsoft business applications, and it's our mission to support the Microsoft Dynamics 365, Dynamics GP, and Power Platform community of application users and professionals by empowering community members with the tools and information required to excel and grow in their professions. Dynamics user group programs. You become a Dynamics user group member for free and access our broad spectrum of programs designed to build community, encourage connection, and empower education. So we can see the programs here. We have the free online open forum discussions, free virtually around product content, DynamicsCon live, regional meetups for anyone to join, like the one we are having, solutions and services from ISVs and partners, DynamicsCon virtual event, on-demand training classes from field-recognized Microsoft experts, and on-demand conference session recordings, and much more. All right, so in a nutshell, that's Dynamics User Group. It's a free community for you to be able to join. So welcome all to this meetup today. And our speaker is Stefano Demiliani. He's an experienced technical Business Central consultant. And he's also an author, a Microsoft MVP, and a Microsoft MCT. I don't know the number of years of experience that he has. Maybe he'll tell us. But in his introduction, he's from Italy. He's the MCT regional lead, and he has recently published a book which he might speak about on Business Central. And we'll cover how to leverage Azure services in Business Central. So without further ado, welcome, Stefano, and you can take it over. Yep.
Thanks a lot, and thanks to everyone to be here today. I will share my screen before starting our discussion today. First of all, thanks for inviting me to speak with you today. My goal for today is talking about a bit about using Azure services in Business Central project. And also I will explain the reason why we talk about this topic today. Yes, I have quite a long experience in Business Central. I started working when NIV was called Navision. So my first version was Navision 2.1. I worked with the old Navision company. Then Navision was acquired by Microsoft, so I moved to Microsoft, and I work in the NIV, Business Central, and Azure staffs the world from probably more than 20 years. My goal for today is, as I said before, talking about using Azure in Business Central, and there's a reason for that. Because why we want to talk and mainly about Azure, because when I see Business Central project, I probably from every part of the world, and when I see a Business Central project, so a traditional ERP project based on Business Central, normally I always see that there's Business Central as the core of the project, and then inside Business Central, together with Business Central projects, partners creates lots of stuff. Lots of stuff means obviously customization of business processes, then create scheduled task, then create task for integration with the external system or with other applications, creates procedures or application for file management, create objects for reporting and data analysis. And probably the big errors in Business Central projects, especially in Business Central Cloud projects, is that all these tasks, I always see that are done inside the Business Central platform, so are done in IL language. This works. Okay, if a project is done like this, it's okay, probably. But a project like this is often not cloud optimized, because doing every types of task in IL language inside the ERP box is not always the best in terms of performances and in terms of tenant management itself. So what normally I see that people try to forget is that the Microsoft ecosystem is big. Microsoft ecosystem is composed of a large set of applications that spans from traditional Microsoft 365 application, Dynamics 365 applications, Power Platform. We are in this box, normally in a Business Central project. We know that there's this box, but sometimes we forgot that the platform where everything runs is Azure. And with Azure, you can do a lot for helping your Business Central projects. And what's normally I see that there's inside the Business Central project. When I analyze with partners the Business Central project, I see that normally, I don't know your experience, but this is my experience. Even the Business Central project, we have, first of all, customizations. And customization are from two words: app source extensions, so apps that comes from the marketplace, and then per tenant extension, so customization that the partner is doing for a specific customer. Then inside the Business Central project, there are usually lots of tasks handled via job queue, because partners try to schedule tasks for business processes, for integration with external systems, using the job queue. And this is not always one of the best choice. Another thing that I see inside Business Central is that normally Business Central is not alone. It must be integrated with other applications in a traditional project, an external B2B or external applications. And normally partners often tries to do that all in IL language. So they create IL procedures with complex HTTP calls, complex message generation using XML, JSON, and so on, complex message decoding. So lots of tons and tons of lines of IL code for doing things that can probably be done in a different way. In the traditional Business Central Cloud project, there is also file management. File management is a problem for many aspects. And another point where normally is not optimized, I see that sometimes Business Central partners know that there's Power Automate for automate user-centric tasks, but Power Automate sometimes is also used in a Business Central project for not user-centric tasks. So, for example, for integrations with another application, Power Automate is often not the best choice in this case. So, normally, I observe that cloud services are often forgotten in a Business Central project. So all partners, traditional partners at least, tries to do everything inside the ERP. So my goal for today is try to answer a question. So what Azure services can be useful for a Business Central project? So in order to create a more SaaS compliant, a more modern Business Central project, what Azure services can be used? And to answer this question, I want to talk to some of them, not the entire Azure stack, but some of Azure services that you should start using in your Business Central project in order to optimize things. The first service that I want to talk is about file management. I think that you know that in Business Central has the possibility to handle attachments. Attachments means that I can attach files to a Business Central entity. let's say, sorter, a customer, or every application, every entity you want that supports attachment. And to handle attachments, Business Central has this interface, the attachment box, where a user can click here, add an attachment with drag and drop, and the attachment is stored inside the Business Central database. This is not optimal. Works, obviously, it's the standard feature, but this is not optimal because mainly for different reasons. But mainly at the moment, I want to talk mainly because probably you know that the attachments since July 2021, the attachments, so capacity occupied by fields like blob, media, and something like that is counted towards the overall database storage capacity. And in an online tenant, you have a limit of storage capacity. Limit that is a fixed limit plus some gigabytes per user. And this is usually the traditional storage policy from Microsoft. So you have a base limit of 80 gigabytes, and then a set of gigabytes additional for user according to the user license. If you go over this database size, you need to pay for additional gigabytes. So you need to acquire more storage. And so first problem, you need to pay more if your storage becomes big. Second problem is handling unstructured data like blobs, like media, and so on inside the Business Central database is not optimal in terms of overall performances. A traditional relational database is not created and done for handling unstructured data like blobs. It can handle, but it's not optimal. So it's much better, for example, use an Azure services for that. And the first Azure service that I want to talk about is the Azure Blob Storage. The Azure Blob Storage is a service that is present on Azure, useful for handling massive scale unstructured data file. So it's like a cloud storage that you can use for storing your files. And how the Azure storage is done? The Azure storage in Azure is as a hierarchical namespace. It starts for what is called a storage account. A storage account is a service on Azure that you can create on your Azure subscription or on your customer Azure subscription in an Azure region. Normally, it's recommended to create it in an Azure region according to the Azure region where your Business Central environment is stored. Inside the Azure storage account, you can have different containers. And containers is an entity that contains data files, blobs, or something like that. And inside a container, you can have multiple files, obviously, of different types. So a container is something like a file system where you can store unstructured data. And in the previous slide, you saw how the pricing policy is for storage in Azure. So for storage for the Business Central storage, so you pay quite a lot of money if you want to increase the storage capacity. Instead, the Azure Blob Storage has a very, very low cost. 1 terabyte of Azure storage costs something like 10 euros, 20 to 30 euros. And it's much, much more useful and convenient to use that instead of using the standard Business Central database for handling unstructured data like blobs. So first idea that normally I recommend when using Business Central project is if you have a customer that often use files, so often needs to save attachments inside the Business Central database or something like that. Instead of doing that, why not saving files into Business Central, into the Azure Blob Storage? And in terms of talking about attachment, the case that I want to show here is what I would like to do today is using the standard interface, not changing the standard interface. So what I would like to do is continue using this interface. So I want that, what I would like to have is that I can use the standard interface. So my user can open, for example, a sales folder, click on the attachment standard interface, and upload in the standard way a file, an attachment. But this file under the hood don't go, in this case, into Business Central, but is automatically saved into an Azure Blob Storage. In Business Central, I have only a link, for me, totally transparent, where I can open the file, download the file, and something like that. So this is the first scenario that I want to present out and how to handle. First of all, let me jump to my Business Center just to show how it works. I need to refresh because my session is disconnected. Sorry for that. So the first scenario that I want to show you is something like that. I am on an entity, imagine this customer. On Azure, I have created a service called storage account. This storage account in this case. Storage account, as I said before, is a service on Azure that permits you to store files. This storage account runs in a region that you can absolutely decide, compatible to your Business Central installations. And in a storage account, you can create containers. Container means that you can have different container of files. In my case, I use this container called BC Blobs, where I have a set of files here. What I want to do is something like that. I want to use the standard attachment interface. So in my here I'm on a customer record, for example, and I want to attach a file. So I click on here, I click attach file, and as in the standard user interface, I can upload the file. So just wait 1 minute that I select a file. So I select this PDF file, for example, and I drag it on it. Standard user interface. So my file is saved with as in the traditional user interface. What happens under the hood in this case? If I go on Azure and I refresh, you can see that my file is not stored in Business Central. It's stored inside Azure. So I can store terabytes of data without consuming a single Business Central bytes of capacity. And from here, I can open the file, I can download the file as before. So I can use every standard features, but my files are not saved inside the Business Central database. So in this case, my files don't go to increase the storage capacity. How you can do that? Business Central has a quite interesting blob module, Azure Blob Storage module. And the Azure Blob Storage module is mainly handled with three objects that are the first interface storage service authorization is the object required to authenticate to the storage account. Code unit storage service authorization is the code unit that contains the method for authentication. And then the code unit ABS blob client, ABS stands for ACE blob storage, blob client, that is the code unit that contains all the method to work with the storage account. What I'm doing here, simply I'm subscribing to an event of the document attachment table, standard table where Business Central handle attachments. The event is the on before insert. And here I'm connecting to my storage account. So connection is uses this code unit, storage service authorization, dot create shared key. And I'm passing my key, access key of the storage account that you can retrieve from the Azure portal. This method is successfully authenticated, returns an authorization object interface that then you can use calling the code unit ABS block client dot initialize method that where you pass the account, the storage account name, the container name, and the authorization object that you have previously retrieved. This connects you to the storage account, and then you can upload the file to the storage account with these methods. So here, what I'm doing, I'm retrieving the file uploaded from the user. I'm retrieving the file name, and I'm calling this method where I pass the file name and the stream of the file. This method saves the file into the Azure Blob Storage. So my file is into the Azure Blob Storage. And I'm also handling the deletions. So the same is for the deletion. I'm also subscribed to the deletion. Why the deletion? Because what I want to do here is also something like that. So I want to do here, if I delete this attachment like this, I also want that this is in sync. So this attachment disappears from here. To handle that, I'm also subscribing to the on before delete event of the document attachment table, where I'm doing the same. I connect it to the storage account, and then I call the delete blob methods useful for deleting the blob. This permits you to save the file into the storage account and not into the Business Central database. To do that, there's also this event that must be subscribed, because I don't want I want only that the file is only saved to the Azure Blob Storage, not into the Azure database. So I also subscribe in the on after insert event of the document attachment table. And here it's important to do this, because the clear of the document reference ID of the record attachment table avoids that you save the files also into the Business Central database. So the file in this case is only saved into the Azure Blob Storage. So you can also upload a movie, for example, I don't know, 1 terabyte of movie, and this 1 terabyte does not go into the Business Central database. It's stored outside. So your database remains fast, clean, and the storage is not consumed. So it's absolutely one of the recommendation that first recommendation that I want to leave to you. If you have customers that widely use attachments into Business Central, please use that. Use the Azure Blob Storage, because it's much better and save money and also performances. The Azure Blob Storage also has other advantages that I want to quickly talk about. If you save a file into the Azure Blob Storage, you can also save the file into the client of the customer, because you can use Power Automate, or you can use Azure Logic Apps, where I quickly call later. Logic Apps or Power Automate as a connector with the file storage, where you can connect to the Azure Blob Storage account and the file system, and the file system action as asks you to install a bridge. A bridge is a gateway that puts you in contact the Azure cloud with the customer PC, customer network. So when you save the file into the Azure Blob Storage in a particular folder in the Azure Blob Storage, this file is automatically moved in a particular network folder on the customer network. So it's also useful if you want to, from the SaaS, save a file into the customer network. The same goes for FTP. FTP is another problem that you have on SaaS. Often customers ask me to, can I automatically generate a file from Business Central online and then move these files to an FTP server? Yes, you can, because you can save the file into the Azure Blob Storage and then use the file FTP connector or Power Automate or Logic Apps to move that files to FTP, or also vice versa, like in this example. In this example, I'm using the FTP. So when an external entity saves a file into a particular FTP, I retrieve this file and I save this file into my blob storage. When the file is in blob storage from Business Central, I can connect to the blob storage and read the file as very easily with one line of code. So the Azure Blob Storage connector is first of all the service that I want to recommend to use. And the Azure Blob Storage connector can also be used for on-premises. So it's not SaaS only. You can use that also in on-premises installations. Recommended, for example, if you want to store file in a safe folder instead of using file system. The second service that I want to start mentioning, Azure services that I want to start mentioning, because I think it's one of the most important Azure services in Business Central projects to use in Business Central projects, is Azure Functions. Azure Function is a serverless compute service that permits you to run code in the cloud without provisioning infrastructure or managing infrastructure. So you simply deploy a code into the Azure cloud. You have an endpoint, and you call this code runs in the cloud, and you can call this code from everywhere. So for us, it's something like Business Central sends Business Central and a black box, where the black box is the Azure function. We send a request to the Azure function, and we have a response from the Azure function. Why Azure functions are important for Business Central projects? Mainly because Azure function permits us to have a fully serverless way to run code in the cloud without doing nothing. So we deploy the code. The code can also use external components, external DLLs, something like that, external libraries. Azure Function scales automatically. So according to the number of requests that we have, Azure Function scales. So we don't have to talk about and think about performances. Azure Function can have different triggers. So you can have Azure Function that can be called from an application like Business Central with the calls and then gives an answers, but we can also have Azure Function that runs in a scheduled way, timer trigger away, or we can have Azure Function that react automatically to Azure services, having events in Azure services, like for example, the saving a file on a blob storage. And why Azure Functions are important for Business Central projects? Mainly, first problem that we have from the old NIV era. In NIV, it's quite often partners creates .NET variables, so DLLs that can be used as .NET variables inside the projects. And you know that you cannot execute .NET variables in Business Central Online. Business Central Online does not support Business Central, .NET variables for security reasons. So if I have a .NET library, for me, in NIV was absolutely important, and I want to reuse that in Business Central Online. How can I do that? You can embed that .NET DLLs inside an Azure function, and then call that from an Azure function. This DLL will automatically deploy into the cloud, and you can reuse as before this existing DLL in a SaaS environment. So this is the first problem that Azure function solves. The other problem is interacting with Azure services. So when you need interaction with Azure services, like I want to put a message in a queue because I need to talk with another application, I want to react to Azure events, like the saving a file into the blob storage or something like that, or I want to write the data into an Azure SQL database from Business Central. Azure functions are quite often the way to go. The same is for integrations. Azure functions are a great way for integration with external systems and decoupling external systems, and I will talk about that later. And also creating serverless processes, workflows, timer-based processing, something like that. Azure functions are a great way to do that. Creating Azure function is very easy. You can use Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code. It totally depends on the tool that you want to use. I suggest, if possible, to use Visual Studio because it's much more powerful for doing that. Otherwise, Visual Studio Code is the same. If you have Visual Studio Code, you need to install an extension in Visual Studio Code called Azure Functions. This extension must be installed in order to support the creation of Azure function. And when you have this extension installed, you have this Azure panel here, and you can click here in order to create an Azure function project. If you have Visual Studio has Azure function support, so you create a new project where type is Azure function. you select where to store the project. You give it your function name, the name you want, and you click on next. And Visual Studio then asks, Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code is totally the same. Ask you first question is, what is the runtime of the function that you want to create? And you need to select one of the available runtime. Azure Function now is recommended to use the .NET 8 isolated runtime because it's the actually modern runtime as the actually runtime supported by the function. What isolated means that the Azure Function code runs separated from the platform code. So in your Azure Function, you can use what type of DLL you want, also if it's not .NET 8 supported. Then you can select the type of function that you want to use. And as you can see here, there are lots of type of functions. Blob trigger means a function that is triggered when you save a blob into the file. Cosmos DB trigger is a function that is triggered when you save a record into a NoSQL database called Cosmos DB, and so on for others. The most common is the HTTP trigger. So probably 90% of the time you create an Azure function, you create an HTTP trigger functions. This means that this is a function that you can call by raising an HTTP request, and then it gives you a response. So I create this, and Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code creates the project for me. And I don't want to go too much in depth on this because here it's not poor Business Central. Simply just to know that here is your function name. So here you can change it and as you want. Here you can select if your function supports get or post. If you don't want to support get, simply remove, and your function support post. And here is where you will need to write your function code. So here is where you will write your function code. Just as an example, I have created an Azure function here previously. Sorry, not this, but this. My Azure function here, I was creating Visual Studio Code, but it's the same. This function is an HTTP triggered function called query generator that simply receives a request from Business Central or from another application, retrieves the URL parameter from the request, and generates a query code. How it generates a query code? By using an external DLL. So this query coder DLL is an external DLL, not created by me, but it's a DLL that I've downloaded from NuGet, created by third party, simply because I want to show you that you can use this DLL from an Azure function, like it was like your DLL. You can reuse everything you want. So when I deploy this code in the cloud, this code is deployed into my Azure subscription here. Connection. And this code, when deployed, runs in the cloud together with all the DLLs that I decided to use. So here I have a function running called query generator that I can call by using the endpoint listed here. So get function URL is the endpoint that I need to call. I can test the Azure function locally or not when developing. So Azure function can also be developed locally and tested locally. If I want to test my Azure function from here, I simply, for example, send a GET request to this endpoint. If I want to test this Azure function locally, I can send this GET request to this endpoint, and it works. Just to show that in action, here I have placed into the customer card an action to generate QR code. So if I select the customer, I have this action, generate customer QR code. And what this action is doing, if click, it, as you can see here, it generates an image file. And this image file is a QR code image generated by my Azure function. So from Business Central, I call it an external Azure function that uses an external component to generate for me a QR code, and it gives me the QR code. Now I download it, but I imagine that I can save it into every record I want in Business Central. So how can I call this Azure function from Business Central? Business Central has a great new module, Azure function module. So these 4 objects are the objects that you need to know in order to use Azure functions. So here I have my Azure function URL. This is my Azure function URL deployed in the cloud. I'm calling this function in this way. So I use the Azure function authentication code unit, and I'm authenticating with my Azure function using what is called code authentication. So passing the function URL and the function key. The function key is the parameter that you can retrieve when deploy the Azure function in the cloud, going from here, app keys. Here you have your function key. You can create more than one, for example, one for customer or something like that. And this is the function key that you need to have in order to authenticate to your Azure function. So let me jump back here. No, not here, but the other Visual Studio here. So I'm authenticated to the Azure function, then I'm sending a post request with this, calling this code unit Azure function dot send post request is the method that you need to send in order to sending a request to the Azure function. So I'm passing the authentication, the body, JSON body parameter containing the parameters. In this case, I'm passing a JSON composed with a tag called URL and the parameter that is the URL of the customer. And I'm calling this function retrieves a binary response. So I'm reading the binary response as with this method. So the Azure function response code unit contains the object responsible to handle a response from Azure functions. And here you have different methods. So get result stream, for example, can be used for Azure function that returns binary. But you can have get result as text if your Azure function returns text and something like that. And then I downloaded the image to the customer. So with 3 lines of code, 1, 2, and 3, I'm handling the call to an Azure function, retrieving the response. So very useful and very common in order to, in this example, for example, reusing external components. So when I have the need to handle complex external component for doing complex actions that I cannot do from Business Central. Come on, PowerPoint. Okay. So this is the code that I previously showed from my example. So you remember that now you have a native way to handle Azure function in the platform. For calling Azure function, 4 lines of code, and you can handle your Azure function, the demo I previously done. But I want also to talk about another scenario where Azure functions are useful. You probably know that Business Central exposes APIs. And traditional way to use APIs is from an external application, is from Business Central, I create an API in a language. I expose the APIs when deploy my API. And from the external application, I can directly call Business Central in order to, the external application directly calls the APIs. So this means that the external application needs to authenticate to Business Central using Azure Active Directory or Enter ID now, needs to know the endpoint of the API, and needs also to know the rules of the API. So how the API can be called, how the API responds, what is the JSON, and so on. sometimes this is not the best way to do. So normally in the traditional Business Central project, you can have different problems about that. So when you have an external application directly calling Business Central API, you can have first problem is scalability, and you have a direct connection between this application and this application. And sometimes it's not the best way to do. Sometimes it's useful to decouple things. So Business Central should be decoupled by the external application. And to handle decoupling, you need to create a layer in the middle. Why this layer? Mainly because first, to solve different problems. First problem is you can have different application calling Business Central APIs, so lots of calls. And these lots of calls can have operational limits. So it's much better to have something in the middle. Other problems that usually I see, sometimes the external application is not able to call directly the Business Central API because it cannot handle Azure Active Directory authentication, for example, or it don't know how to call with Business Central APIs. And the other problem is when you have lots of application that calls Business Central APIs, this can create problems on the tenant. So it's much better to have something in the middle that takes the calls, plays the message in something like in a queue or something like that, and then you pass the messages to Business Central when you want. So why these scenarios? Because in this way, system are decoupled, the external system can avoid calling by APIs directly. You can control what the callers do and what the callers can do. And you can also control operational limits. How you can do that? Azure Function is often a solution. And what I want to show now here is exactly like this sample. So let me open this. What I have in this sample. First of all, I want let me do a very quick demo. I don't remember where I have the call here. Probably yes. Okay, so here I have deployed in my Azure subscription. If I go here, I select functions. I have an Azure function called Satisfy API layer. This is an Azure function that at the moment here supports two methods, get customer and post customer. So a method that reads customer and the method that post customer. Scenario is I have an external application that wants to call Business Central API to handle customers. I don't want that my external application directly calls Business Central APIs for the reason I previously explained. The external application cannot handle authentication, and the external application cannot handle the complexity of the Business Central API. So I want to have something in the middle. In this case, I have, sorry, not this sample, but this sample. In this case, you can see that I'm here, for example, for retrieving customers from Business Central, I'm calling an endpoint that is not my Business Central APIs. This is my API area.azurewebsites.net/get customers. So name of my functions. But if I call this, the call is sent to the endpoint. And as you can see, the response is a response coming from Business Central. So this response comes from the Business Central APIs. And this is the JSON of the standard customer APIs, but I'm not directly calling. So as you can see from here, I'm not handling authentication to Business Central. The same is for creation. If I need to create a customer, I'm sending a post request to this endpoint, passing a JSON, this JSON. Here I can call something like, let me change this, DUG customer. And if I send this request is sent to Business Central. The customer is created with this number, with this name and something like that. You can see if I go into my Business Central and I go into the customers, I can see that, let me refresh the customers. You should see a customer called the UG customer. And so I'm not, my external application, where is the DUG? Customer, not here. Why? Probably I'm not calling the right company. Yes, exactly, because I'm calling a different endpoint, sorry. But yes, it's a different Business Central tenant. I not change the endpoint. But as you can see here, the customer is created. How can I do that? Later I will show you that the customer is present. As you can see here, I have an Azure function called this is 5BC API layer that exposes this endpoint, get customer and post customer. Here I'm receiving a request from the APIs. So I'm reading the, for example, the get customer reads the parameters. You are passing filters or not, and then it sends. It's called this method get customer, where here I'm calling the Business Central APIs. So internally, I'm calling the Business Central APIs, passing the filters, authenticating with bearer token, and something like that. Not the external application. So my external application don't know that there's Business Central on the other side of the call. Simply calls an Azure function, passing a filter, so something like that, exactly like calling Business Central APIs. So I've decoupled the things. The same is for the post customer. When I want to create a customer, so this is the Azure function exposed. I'm reading the body, the JSON coming from the external application, and then I call it a post customer method that in turn calls Business Central APIs doing the post. So this means that it's much more powerful in order to handle this decoupling of things, because things here are really decoupled. So I have the external application that is not calling directly the API. So I can control who can call. I can control how much calls it can do. I can control everything. And I can also decide that the responses can be changed. So maybe I don't want that the response will be in this JSON, but my external application wants a different JSON, and I can handle that. I leave the comment here. If you can see here, you can, for example, if you uncomment this piece of code, for example, here you can create a JSON object, custom JSON object as your external application wants, and you can return this JSON object different than from the standard JSON object returned by the APIs. And this permits you to handle things much more in a better way. The other important Azure service that I want to talk a bit about here is, sorry, first of all, I want to also to mention that Azure function has the possibility also to have a timer trigger. Timer trigger means that it's an Azure function that can be automatically executed every minutes, hour, 10 minutes, I don't know, every tick, when you can specify the timer. And this means that you can have a code that runs in the cloud in a scheduled way. And this sometimes is absolutely useful instead of using the job queue, for example. Because if you have integration tasks that need to read data from Business Central and save data to an external application, instead of doing that from the job queue, why not do that from an timer trigger Azure function that offload the tenants? Much better. Then I want to also talk another Azure service that one of my favorite, the Azure Logic Apps. Azure Logic Apps is another important Azure service that should be used in Business Central projects, because Azure Logic Apps is something like the father of Power Automate. So it has the same power of Power Automate. You can create workflows in a low-code way without writing any lines of code. You can have connectors for different types of applications. So you can have all the available connectors that you have in Power Automate. You can have Azure-related connectors. This means connector related to Azure resources. And you can also have Business Central connectors and Dataverse connector. And you can create workflows in a low-code way, exactly like in Power Automate. So here, for example, is an example of a workflow that I created where when a customer is creating Business Central, I'm retrieving the customer, I insert a row in an Azure SQL database or in an on-premise one. So useful, for example, if you want to save data in your on-premise database, for example, you can use Logic Apps. It has built-in connector to that, to Oracle, for example, or something like that. And then also Azure Function, Logic Apps has also the possibility to call Logic App to call Azure Functions. So inside this workflow, if the customer country is Italy, I want to call the Azure function to generate the QR code of the customer. So I'm calling my previously created Azure function. And then I also add a new record in data in the Dataverse table. So you can have a workflows like this that does a lot of things. So I react to creation of a custom in Business Central and then do a lot of things like saving a file in on-premise database, calling Azure function, saving a data on Dataverse, and something like that. So Logic Apps can do a lot. And Logic Apps can be created directly from the Azure portal or also from Visual Studio Code. So that's the news of Logic Apps. Logic Apps, very quickly, can have two types of plan when you create a Logic Apps. Consumption plan or standard plan. Consumption plan means that you pay for consumption. You create a workflow and you pay every time the workflow is executed, cost per action, 0.00 per action. Standard means that it's the modern way to create Azure Logic Apps, is the more advanced one. Standard means that you can have a standard plan where you fix a price, where all your Azure function runs. And inside the Azure Logic App standard, you can have multiple workflows. Here, for example, you have different workflows. And these workflows can be two types of workflow. You can create stateful or stateless workflows. Stateful means that are workflows with actions that saves the state of each action on every iteration. It's exactly like Power Automate or like standard Logic Apps. Stateless are instead a new type of workflows, particularly useful for some operations. Stateless means that it's a workflows that runs entirely in memory. It's not saving the state, but it's very, very fast. It has a maximum duration of 5 minutes. But for example, if you need to create a workflows that takes Business Central data, saves the Business Central data into in Azure SQL database, and then performs calculation, this calculation, why you don't create a stateless workflow for that? Because it runs very, very fast. In Logic Apps, you can create sub workflows. So, for example, in this stupid example, if I open the designer of this, you can see that I have a main workflows that does some action if the Azure portal reacts. Come on. And then calls a sub workflows. So you can have nested workflows inside Logic Apps. Come on, designer. Let me retry to reopen. The Azure portal is not helping. Okay, designer. I want to show that I have a workflows calling child workflows. And This is particularly useful when you have complex workflows, because you can split the execution. Come on. Okay. So this workflow, for example, when an HTTP request is coming, so when someone is calling me, I'm retrieving some customers from Business Central, and then does some actions, and then I invoke a workflow. So here, you can specify a sub workflows to execute, passing some parameters. And these child workflows can be, for example, a stateless workflows, because maybe I only want to do calculations, something like that. So this can be very, very fast. And sometimes creating processes like this absolutely increase performances of your Azure functional execution. And this is a recommended way to do that. So Logic Apps has a great advantages of you can use different types of connectors. Every connector that you have in Power Automate is available in Logic Apps, and Logic Apps has also more than this. So you can have different. Here, as you can see in this workflow, for example, starts from when a customer is creating Business Central, it retrieves the customer and then is doing different actions, like inserting a row on SQL. So I have a connector for Azure SQL that can be online or also on-premise. So you can also save data into your SQL on-premise. And then it's doing other conditions. If the condition is true, I call an Azure function, for example. So you can have also call Azure function or something like that. And then I insert the record in Dataverse. So I have also connector for Dataverse, connector for every type of application you want. So very, very powerful. And remember that why Logic Apps is also powerful. I usually show this line to very quickly to talk about that. Normally, when you have a workflow, for example, in Power Automate, a workflow is a set of actions, and each actions is executed in sequence. And this means that every action has its own SLA. And if you have a workflow like this, for example, that uses some actions, this workflow has, for example, a downtime per week of 10 to 26 minutes by SLA, because every connector you use in Power Automate or in Logic Apps has per contract its own SLA. So if you have a sequence of actions, this action has some SLA like this, in this case, for example, and this workflow has 26 minutes downtime per week. So if these workflows don't work for 26 minutes a week, it's okay for Microsoft because it's contract. But imagine that I have a real world project where 26 minutes downtime for this process cannot be accepted. If I do that in Power Automate, I cannot avoid that because it's by design. But if I'm using Logic Apps to do the same workflows, I can have parallelized things. So I can deploy your solution across multiple regions, for example. So the same Logic Apps in multiple regions. And this means that parallelizing this, and if this goes down, I have this up. And if you do the mathematical calculation of this means that these workflows deployed in this way, so same workflow deploying to multiple regions, have 4 seconds downtime per week. And this is much more reliable and enterprise ready than the before. So it's absolutely important to remember that. And the last Azure services that I want to quickly talk before closing is Azure API Management. Azure API Management, why I want to talk about that? Because I see a lot of projects, big projects mainly, where we have a Business Central or external application that needs to call different endpoints. So we have Azure Function, we have Logic Apps, we have custom web application, we have third-party APIs. So in this code, I need to place all these endpoints that are different application, different URL, different authentications, something like that. Sometimes it's better to do a scenario like this, where this calls a single endpoint. And it's this endpoint that routes the request to the other endpoints. So knows the particular endpoint to call the Azure function, the particular endpoint to call the logic apps, and so on. So for me, external application or Business Central is simply calling a unique URL with the particular function method. This can be done by using Azure API Management. That is a service that you can deploy on Azure. And Azure API Management is a unified management platform for APIs across Azure environments. And what Azure API Management has the possibility to define what is called an API inside the API management. And here you can define API from scratch, so by placing definitions, but you can also import APIs from other resources. So if you have previously deployed an Azure function or previously created a workflow in logic apps, you can embed, simply clicking here, create from resource, embed the Azure function in API management, embed the logic apps in API management. And then, for example, you select Azure function for logic apps is the same. You can select the Azure function. And as you can see here, you have a unified URL for everything. So you select the Azure function, you select what Azure function you want to embed. And this is embedded. So you don't call the Azure function by using the URL or direct URL of the Azure function, but you call this endpoint that is fixed for every application you have. So API Manager is a wonderful bridge. If you have lots of APIs or workflows, something like that you want to call, and you want to have a single endpoint where you can control who can call, how can call, and in what rate you can call, what IP can call, and so on. So for enterprise scenarios is a service that you should remember that exists. So to close this quick chat about the main, not as I said before, not the entire Azure services available, but the main Azure services that you should start exploring in real world projects because it helps a lot. So the message that I want to pass here is using Azure services in the cloud ERP project is the best practice to adopt because it can save you performances, it can save you money, it permits you to decouple applications, so and better handling integrations, better handling complex workflows, and offloading the tenant. Offloading the tenant means avoid that Business Central is doing everything. Avoid to have performance problem in Business Central. Business Central and IL language should be used for business process, not for complex integrations. Complex integrations, there's other. So these ends. I know that talking about all these services here in 45 minutes is difficult. So if you want to have step-by-step and in-depth explanation of all these services, we have recently released a Business Central Advanced Guide for developers that you can find on Amazon or on Pact website. This is a very large book that covers everything you need to know in order to create advanced application in Business Central. There are also different chapters dedicated to create using Azure services for Business Central projects that explain step by step how to use Azure function, how to use logic apps, how to create advanced application with these services from Business Central. So recommended if you want to explore that. So this ends my conversation about this topic. As said before, there are lots to say, so hoping that you will find information. Feel free to reach me if you want to go in depth after that. Sorry for the webcam, but I don't know why the webcam is not working anymore. So if you have some questions, something like that, I'm available to do that. Otherwise, as I said before, feel free to ping me on socials, on LinkedIn, on mails, or something like that. I usually answer as quickly as possible.
All right. All right. Yeah. We are just past a few minutes, but you guys will give us just a few minutes. Thank you. Thank you very much, Stefano. That was really comprehensive. In a short period, you have compressed so much. We feel like we need to
Yes,
give you some more minutes.
unfortunately, there are lots of topics, but I honestly prefer to leave you the message, and then you have a wider
Understanding.
overview of all the possibilities. Then, if you when you have a project, you know that there's this service, and that can help. And if you want to go in depth into the particular service, there are documentation. You can reach me. There's the book. There's something like that. But for today, for a short meeting, I think that the most important goal is to pass the message that there are these services. These services are extremely useful for Business Central projects, for performances. So remember that they exist.
Sure. That's amazing.
I see a question here. Can ABS be used for on-premise implementation? Answer is yes. So the Azure Blob Storage can also be used for on-premises implementations. It's not linked to SaaS environments only. So recommended if you need to use files or something like that in on-premise, and you want to have a secure storage for your files, cheaper storage. You can save your files instead of network folders. For example, if you are on-premise, use the blob storage. Is a great way to save your files because you have automatic backups, geo-redundancy, something like that. So it's a great way also for the on-premise.
Sure. Anyway, anybody with a question, a quick question before we close? All right. Maybe, Stefano, you can share your links to where people can reach you, and then maybe they can, if somebody has a question, they can reach you directly.
Yes.
The LinkedIn and all that.
Exactly. Let me share on the chat my LinkedIn because I not placed it in the slides. Sorry for that. So you can reach me here if you want to have questions, or on Twitter. I also available here. So you can reach me on this social. I feel free to write messages, and I answer to everyone. Just give me the time to react, but I normally answer quite quickly. So feel free to reach me.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll definitely call you back for another meetup when, if people want you to cover more Azure services or any other topic. And since we have already covered, sure. Since you have already covered more minutes, we will close it from here. And I'll see you in the next meetup. Thank you, Stefano, and thank you all for joining.
Thank you everyone to join, and enjoy your weekend.
Okay, you too.
Bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye.